No one talked about college. At that time, it seemed that the ultimate goal of a young man graduating from high school was to try to get on the police force or the fire department. Very early on, I decided that I very much wanted to go to college. Went through high school, did very well, had good grades, but college was unheard of. I didn't even think of it because my folks could not afford a college education. And mind you now, this is the late 20s and the 30s. This is the height of the Great Depression of the 20s and 30s. So people were out of work. We had lines, Apple lines, welfare was going through the roof. And so there was no question about college. But anyway, when I graduated from high school, I was hoping to find a job, but jobs were hard to come by. John Martin became my benefactor. He had me come in and I'd do a lot of painting around the offices, work on the roof, because these are things that he would have to pay union people for, but with me he didn't, but he gave me work. And he knew I was ambitious, that I wanted to go to college. It ended up, for the entire time I was in college, every day that I was in Salem, if it was a 3-day Thanksgiving weekend, if it was summer, whatever, every day that I was in Salem, I had a job at Dan Donahue's. And that was really, that and my job in college enabled me to go to college. A friend of mine who was managing one of my baseball teams said he had been out in western Massachusetts, and on the way back he stopped at a place called Amherst. It had Amherst College and Massachusetts State College. And Amherst College was a rich man's college. They had elaborate fraternities, but they were the rich kids. Mass State had been an agricultural college, but it was now a state college, Massachusetts State College. And he liked the looks of it. It was a small college in New England. So he arrived. I had never heard of Massachusetts State College. I did a little research and found that it was a state college, and the tuition was less there than any other college. So suddenly I focused on Massachusetts State College. Toward the end of the time that I was out, I applied to Mass State College. I was admitted. And when I got to Mass State and I'm getting acquainted, I suddenly learned that there's something there called ROTC. And I had never heard of ROTC. So I began asking questions, and they explained to me what ROTC was. Well, Mass State College was called a land-grant college. And as a land-grant college, it was required to have every able-bodied man required to take 2 years of ROTC. Of course, I took the physical, passed, and I was issued a military uniform. Then, after I learned that ROTC was what I just described, I learned that the branch at Mass State College was horse cavalry, not artillery, not infantry, but horse cavalry. So I loved that. That sounded great. The only connection I had had with horses then was seeing them on a farm. But now I was going to learn to ride, and to ride horses for 2 years. So being the outgoing guy that I was, this was right down my alley. Some of the classmates of mine hated it every minute. I loved every minute. We were called cadets, ROTC cadets, and we would wear our civilian clothing part of the time and our military clothing. If we had a class indoors, a military class, we wore the uniform. But most of the time, our military training was outdoors with the horses. And what we did, we had a certain number of horses, and the freshmen would use the horses one day, sophomores would do it the next day, so we staggered. So for 2 years, in addition to all my studies, I had ROTC. We had extra classwork and all this outdoor training. And so it was quite a challenge, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I learned much because we had a captain, the man that was with us all the time, and we had a major that was called Professor of Military Science and Tactics, PMS&T, and he was an outstanding individual. So I looked up to them both. So I had a very, very fun time with my ROTC. 2 years passed. I'm soon to be a junior. I suddenly hear from the major. He announces to us that there's a program called Advanced ROTC. And he said those who were selected would take Advanced ROTC. They'd be called military majors on the campus. They would be issued officer uniforms. And at the end of their senior year, if they passed, they would be commissioned as second lieutenant in the Cavalry Reserve. I immediately indicated to him and applied. Sure enough, I was fortunate enough to be one of 25 sophomores selected to take Advanced ROTC. And they had 25 juniors, 25 seniors. My junior and senior years, I had, in addition to all my classes, I was playing football and baseball. I was a military major. But as I said, I loved every minute of it. At the end of our junior year, we made a junior hike. And the junior hike would take us to Burlington, Vermont. And this was a long stint. It was over 3 weeks. What the hike consisted of, we rode our horses from Amherst, Massachusetts, straight up from Massachusetts to the Vermont border, and we went the whole length of Vermont on horseback. The officers had reconnoitered the best route, and they picked the small towns because they were dirt roads. We went through these little towns. The folks would come out as though it was a parade. They'd never seen anything like it, and they'd cheer us on, so this was great. So we would travel probably about 22 miles, and we'd end the day about 2 or 2:30, and they would already have a place set. We'd pull off the road into a bivouac area. And when we got there, the first thing we did was to put in long spikes, put a cord in, and that would be the place where we tied the horses. And we also, after 22, the horses sweat profusely. We'd have to cool them down and groom them. And we pitched pup tents, and we had the pup tents lined up in military formation. What was very, very exciting is they tried to pick nice spots for us to stop overnight. And they picked places that had lake. So after we got the horses in, had groomed them, after we had a tent set up, it'd be late in the afternoon, getting toward the evening, we'd ride the horses bareback from the camp into the lake. It was great for us, and the horses loved it. So when we arrived at Fort Ethan Allen, Vermont, we learned that there were 3 other colleges there in addition to us. It was Norwich University, VMI, and Georgia University. And we were going to be there for 2 weeks using the Rangers. It was the 3rd United States Cavalry Regiment using their troop to be the tactical instructors for us. We were on the Rangers or out on horses, practicing maneuvers. So we had 2 teams, and Mass State and Norwich teamed up against VMI and Georgia.